Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Mike, and to my left we have Miss Gandhi and Nimrod and Esther. Miss Gandhi comes from the Pathway program, formerly known as Foundation, and Nimrod and Esther are both joining us from the Learning Center. Would you guys like to very briefly tell us a bit about yourselves?
Okay, I'm Ms. Gandhi. I've been working for quite a while at James Cook. It's almost 13 years, coming to 13 years. Now, we started the Pathways about 2009. Now, there are two programs parked under Pathways, which we call JCU Pathways School. Basically, we have the foundation programs and the diploma programs. Probably we'll talk a little bit more about it as we go along. Nimrod?
And I'm Nimrod. I'm a learning advisor. I work, a majority of my work is with students in the undergraduate and graduate programs, and I deal with academic skills in general. And maybe later I can share a bit more.
Hello, I'm Esther. I'm the Learning Technology Specialist on Singapore campus, and I work with staff and students around everything blended learning. That includes our online learning environments, design of learning activities, and also support around interventions that we're doing to support the students.
And my name is Mike. I've been living in Asia for 18 years, teaching in Japan and Singapore. I've been at JCU Singapore since 2011. My area of expertise is language acquisition. So at JCU, we have students from all over the world. I think 54 different nationalities are represented in our student body, last time I checked. And our staff is nearly as diverse. And a lot of those students, when they come here, they don't quite have the English skills yet to undertake an English language university program. So they come to the JCU Singapore Language School to get that training before they go on to the degree program. And that's been my area of expertise. I'm a part of the Learning Center, but I work very, very closely with the language program, the English language preparatory program. So moving on to the questions, I think the first question that we should look at, this is probably best answered by Ms. Gandhi, is what is the typical profile of a pathway student? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. I think that's a very interesting and an important question. Now, basically, what are the pathways and who are the students we are looking out for? Now, the pathways basically the foundation program and the diploma, which are part of the pathways. Now, in this program, basically, before we look at the type of cohort of students who come in, now, the basic idea of the foundation program, we benchmark against other Australian foundation programs, and we want to make sure that every student is given an opportunity to be part of an inclusive society where they're able to pursue that degree. So basically, when we talk about pathways, especially starting with the foundation, we have two aspects of the foundation. We have the foundation extended and the foundation program. So we have a diverse group of students joining us from Indonesia, from Vietnam, from China, from Korea, as far as Kazakh. Yep. So we have a whole lot of student body who are joining these programs. Now, what is very interesting about the foundation program for a start? Now, we have students who have finished year 11. They have a year 11 academic qualification. So these are the students who are able to pursue the foundation, which is an 8-month program. However, even though we have students who may not have the year 11 qualification, probably they miss 1 or 2 points, for example, like IGCSE. Instead of a 15 points, if they have 11 points, they can join the pathway, what we call the Foundation Extended Program, which is another 4 months. So together with the Foundation Extended, which is 4 months, and the Foundation Program, 8 months, just within a year, students with year 11 qualifications, those who come in directly into the foundation, it's really a shortcut to the undergraduate programs. Because what happens here, after 8 months of this program, where we really build up their skills and capabilities, which prepares them for the undergraduate program, and they are quite ready, really. And then it's a lot of saving where time is concerned, where cost is concerned. Because after just 8 months of the foundation, they move on to the undergraduate. Now, the foundation program has got 10 subjects, and if they get an average of 65%, average, 65%, that means what I'm trying to say is that there's no need for every subject for them to score a 65%. Because every kid has their forte. Some may be good in mathematics, so they can get 90 there, but probably they have a little bit of issue with English. So as long as they pass it 50%, and for the 10 subjects, it's an average of 65%, they move on to the first year of the degree, Band 1 JCU degree programs. Now, there's a second pathway, which we call the diploma program. And this is where students who are not able to acquire 65% as an average for the 10 subjects, let's say they get a minimum of 50%, then they move on to the diploma, which is an 8-month program, and then they go on to the second year of the undergraduate program. So after the foundation or the diploma, whether they start after the foundation, they start with a 65% direct entry to the degree, or they start because they did not acquire the 65%, they move on to diploma and degree. All these students will complete their degree in 2 years, which is again a really shortcut, but it doesn't mean that we are compromising on the quality and the standards. They do learn up a lot of skills that really prepares them for the work or the paraprofessional jobs. And that is where, as Mike says, English comes in too. We have these students, they may have year 11 qualification, but not quite the proficiency for English. So that's where they move on to the ELPP. They do the English, we have different levels, they sit for a test, then we look at their competency, and we put them in the appropriate level. So once they're competent in English, or they have a minimum of IELTS 5.5 with the academic qualification, they move on to the foundation or the diploma programs.
Okay, adding on to that, to talk about how the English language program fits in there. As a pathway, you come into the English school to get the English skills you need, and there are several different places you could possibly get out. So if you take a look at the average student in the English program, you're going to see a variety of ages and a variety of backgrounds because they're feeding into all sorts of places. Young students with not such strong English foundations who need to do the foundation program, the pathway program, will come to the English program first, get their English standard up to roughly the equivalent of an IELTS 5.5, and then move on to the foundation program. Other students that don't need the foundation program, the pathway program, can do the English program and then move on to the diploma or the degree program. We have 5 levels in the English program. We start from level intro, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And where you go in sort of depends on what sort of English level you're at before you join us. So if you're around an IELTS 4.5, you're going to start from the intro level. If you're around an IELTS 6.5, you might go to level 4. Level 4 is not necessary for everyone. It's for people that are doing a more demanding undergraduate degree, such as education, psychology, or also if you're going to do a master's degree as well, you'll probably have to do level 4. So how long you spend in the JCU language school and where you go after that, it all depends on you. I think one thing that's clear from this is that there's a variety of ways that you can move forward with JCU, and it's designed to accommodate the needs of lots of different people. Some people take to the language very, very quickly. Some people pick up the skills quite quickly. Other people need more time to pick up the skills. And I think we can accommodate all sorts of needs here. Would you guys like to say a few things about how Learning Center supplements the education of the Pathway program and the language school students?
Nimrod, maybe you take that?
We supplement the awesome support, the great support that you guys are doing. I think one thing that we do is to really develop critical thinking And because to develop the critical thinking is to help them make sense of what they're writing. For example, if a student from the ELPP program or uh, the foundation program writes about global warming, or the student writes about whether Atlantis exists or doesn't exist, whether it's a myth or a fiction. So there's a lot of interaction there. And that's where we come in. There's a lot of interaction there, and that dialogue that we establish, the student and the learning advisor, to me is very meaningful, because that really brings them up to make an argument, whether that argument that they make in an essay or a report is valid or legitimate, or an argument that makes sense. I think that's one thing that we do that supports their learning. I think the critical thinking is there. Plus, of course, I think the PELA, the post-entry language assessment, is what we do not so much with the pathway program students, but with students in the degree program, just for us to have a sense of their language proficiency as they enter the university.
And in terms of learning technology, the technology is really just means to an end. So we're talking about tools that support the students in their learning, considerate design of learning activities. And for example, when it comes to the Learning Center, we run plagiarism support workshops. And that's a mix of talking about how to appropriately cite sources and reference them. But we also have technology to help identify areas where you might need to do some more work. We run a range of different workshops to support students with that. Also, in terms of PELA intervention or other intervention, we're using learning analytics to get a good sense of where students need more support or need more help, and then follow up with different areas in the university to give them the best support we can.
If I may just add on to what Mike had said. Now, what is wonderful about JCU Singapore, it's a one-stop, like we say, we can buy everything under one roof. So when a student comes in, let's say for a ELPP, any level, they don't have to go elsewhere. We have the foundation, the pathways, and then we'll move on to degree. We've got the master's, we've got PhD. So everything is there, the path, whatever path they want to take. And the other thing, what we have is what we call the mobility program. So let's say if a student has finished the foundation and they choose to have an Australian experience, now we will arrange for them to move on there. So there's a lot of, experience that the kids are exposed to. So it really prepares them for whatever skills that is necessary to be able to be, as I may just say, a global citizen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One point I'd like to circle back to is the point about how the Pathway program builds the foundations that students need to be successful. Can you talk a little bit more about, in a little more detail?
Okay,
about that
so
point?
yeah, maybe what I want just to tell you is for the foundation, we've got 10 subjects. And these subjects were specially selected because we make sure they are relevant to some of the undergraduate programs that they are having in mind. For example, business, psychology, psychological sciences, information technology. So we have subjects like English, of course. English, you can't run away from it. And we have a subject called critical thinking, which my colleague Nimrod had talked about. So to be a critic, I think it's really useful. It helps you anywhere, even in your job scope later on when you're working. And we have subjects like, for example, IT. So the foundation program literally builds the kids on the foundation that is necessary to pursue a higher level. So we have subjects like statistics. So when you go to, let's say, a Bachelor of Business or psychology, psychological sciences, so that's where statistics comes in very relevant. And then they have subjects like geography. Some of you may be wondering, why on earth are they doing a geography for a foundation program? But we are focusing on the human aspect of the students or the geography. So what happens, this again becomes quite relevant when they do psychology. Like, for example, in geography, they may talk about, demographic changes. So what is the mindset of people? Why do they move from place to place? Or we try to bring in current events like the pandemic. How is going to have an impact, on your education and what have you. So basically the 10 subjects, it gives them an opportunity or builds their foundation to pursue higher studies. So that's where the foundation comes in. And then we have things like plagiarism, APA referencing. So everything is taught here. So the kids from the foundation, when they move on to the next level of their education, they are really quite well equipped with the necessary skills. And the other thing what we do, which I think is really important, we look at the progression of our students from the foundation to the degree. Are they actually doing well? And since 2009, we have been doing this. And we are very happy to say that at least 87 to 90% of students are coping very well in the undergraduate programs. And this is where or how we know that the foundation is really useful for these students.
Thank you very much. Those are pretty good numbers, I think. For the JCU Singapore Language School, we're focused on English skills specifically, and I kind of mentioned how diverse the student body was in terms of nationality and age and also experience with the language. So just about everybody in the world has had some sort of exposure to English at this point, it seems. There are more learners of English in China than there are native English speakers in the whole world, and as the global language of commerce and trade, it touches all of our lives. But for a student coming from a country where they've received several years of formal education in English, that student might not necessarily have any practical knowledge or experience with a language, meaning that they've never really taken it outside of the classroom. Now, for a student like that, the JCU Singapore language program is a pretty important step before they join the university, because they have to know how to take what they've learned and this abstract concept of English that's in their mind, they need to make it something concrete. They need to go out and kind of stress test their knowledge and put it to different uses and see how it works and how it doesn't work. And that's a pretty important step. So if you take a look at the way that the language school is laid out, you come in and level 1, you're focused on general English, grammar, vocabulary, talking about daily things, everyday kind of things. But then as you move to level 2, which is the last level before you'd go to the pathway program, you start to shift into a more academic way of using the language. And as I don't need to tell any of you, the English that we need for university is quite different from the English that we'd use with peers. Yes. The English that we'd use in daily life. There's a bit of a mindset shift that happens too, that needs to happen anyway. You need to understand what university English looks like, and you need to understand what it sounds like. And then you need to start trying it out for yourself, writing academic papers, giving academic presentations, taking part in academic discussions. And a student who feels very confident in English, sometimes it's a bit of a shock to them when they realize, oh, the English that I have is not quite the English that I need, and so therefore I need to train myself up this way. And so moving through the language program, when they come out of the other side, they find themselves much better equipped to handle the rigors of academic life. And I think that's an important one. And we also help students shift their thinking about university too. I know in many countries, university is quite difficult to get into. But once you're in, it's very, very easy to get out. Graduating in some countries is a piece of cake. It's a bit backwards here in that it's not difficult to get into James Cook University, Singapore, which is not to say that we don't have standards. I'm just saying it's There's a lot of different ways in and a lot of different ways to progress, but you do have to put in the work to get out again. We're not going to just let anybody graduate just because they've paid their fees. You come in, we teach you how to do the work, we show you what needs to be done, you get it done, you come out the other end a stronger, smarter person. Okay. We've also touched on what the Learning Center does for James Cook University students. You guys have given us an overview, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the Learning Center from a student perspective. So, Ms. Gandhi mentions that 90% of the students from Foundation go on to the degree program, and they're doing fantastic. But for the 10% that aren't, how does Learning Center support them in their struggle to get out of the other side of James Cook University, Singapore with a degree?
I think Nimrod will talk about the intervention. I mean, where the kids are not quite well equipped with English or essay writing. So that's when we send, foundation or pathway students to the Learning Center. Actually, the Learning Center is always accessible to students. But you know how students are, very reluctantly they will do it. So we make it a point here, which is pretty good. Like, I get all my teachers to tell me who are not performing too well after the first or second week. So we identify them, and that's where we send them to the Learning Center. And then, of course, it becomes Nimrod's problem. So
learning must be enjoyed. The university, to me, is a journey. And if there are students right here listening and watching us, I'd like to tell you that the university should not be feared. It is a very, wonderful opportunity for you to build who you are, to build your dreams, what you want to do in life, to build those skills and be prepared for the very complicated world out there. So as Ms. Gandhi said, I don't want that students come because they need help. We don't want to send that message to students that they have some kind of a disability or a learning disability for that matter. That's why they need help. Because we look at you from a very holistic point of view. We aim for your holistic development. So as learning advisors, it's about working together than coming because I have a problem and we will fix your problem. I think it doesn't work that way, but there's a lot of interaction that's happening there. There's a lot of dialogue that's happening there. And don't get me wrong, with dialogue and interactions, that's how we make sense of the world. That's how you make sense of the social problem that you are writing about. That's how you make sense of why you're asking questions in the first place. And that sense of dialogue is how we create that kind of learning, that discourse. I don't want to use discourse, but maybe discussion or, the system of creating and making sense of things. That's how we create knowledge. So in the Learning Center, we do that. We have to be we're welcoming to really talk to you. To me, it's a matter of conversation. Not you go there because you have a problem. No, we don't view students that way. And I think we are guided by some principles when we do that. There's a lot of principles that really guide us.
And I think it's really about opportunities to grow, opportunities to do better and to find better ways of doing it. And there's support from the learning advisors in terms of one-on-one support. We run workshops. We also work very closely with the MS peer tutors. The MS peer tutors are students at JCU Singapore who are doing really well in their area, and they are supporting fellow students with their learning. So it's about working together, learning together, studying together, and helping each other to do better and to grow in your studies.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very eloquent. So I think for if I'm a student and I'm on campus, there's a lot of different ways I can go about getting help. I can go to the Learning Center room during one of the open session hours. Learning Center is located in the library, and there's a doorway facing out into the courtyard. There's a few different ways to approach. So during one of these open sessions, I can go and talk directly to a Learning Center advisor. I can join one of the regularly scheduled workshops, which you would be able to find on the Learning Center webpage. I could email the Learning Center and ask them for a one-on-one appointment or any further information about what's coming up. I could drop into the AMAS peer tutor sessions, which happen on a weekly basis. There's a lot of different ways to approach, and in my experience as the Learning Center advisor for the Pathways program in the language school, I see a whole spectrum of students. The students that are struggling, of course, that are being sent there by teachers saying, Mike can give you a hand and give you the coaching that you need to get through this. And I also see a lot of really high-performing students that are very motivated to, reach peak performance in their subject. So, they'll come to my pronunciation sessions, or they'll reach out to me saying, take a look at this essay, what can I do to make it better? And I can give some advice there. So there's a whole lot of ways to get help.
Maybe I just add on to what Mike and Esther have mentioned. They kept saying the acronym EMAS. EMAS stands for basically English, Maths, Accounting, and Statistics. So the Learning Center is focused on these 4 areas, but of course, if students have other issues, they can always bring it up. We are there to help them.
Yeah, I think between us, right now, the Learning Center staff that are not represented here, Hui Ling, and we're currently hiring a new math and statistics advisor. Between us, we have decades of experience in education as teachers, and of course as students. Nimrod having just completed his PhD. Congratulations, Nimrod, Dr. Nimrod. So we know and for most of us, we've all experienced living and studying and working overseas too. So as workers at an international university, I think that serves us well when we're helping out international students, because we know what it's like to struggle in another country, or we know what it's like to want to get ahead in another country. So that's, we have a lot to bring to the table beyond just what's in our job descriptions or on our resumes. So we're a welcoming place, and we'd like to welcome all students to come see us. Yep. So moving on, blended learning is a massive question, and all of us here have a lot of experience, and especially in the past year, with blended learning. And I think I'd like to let Esther field this question to talk about all the efforts that the steps that we're taking to make sure that we're future-proof and crisis-proof as a university.
Right. Well, blended learning is really about the considered design or mix of online and face-to-face learning activities to help students achieve their learning outcomes, their learning goals. In terms of sustainability, I think we proved in SB 51 in our first study period this term that we actually do have a really reliable and well-working system. For online learning, it's nothing new for James Cook Singapore. We've been using learning technology and our learning management system for many years, and we've actually been through a transition process towards a new system over the past 2 years, and it was a considered transition. And just to give you an example, when the working from home period started and we had to switch to fully online mode within a matter of weeks, our virtual classroom system ramped up from an average of 100 sessions per week to up to 140,000 sessions. And we did manage that really well in terms of stability and security. So I think I'm confident to say that we have a very solid, stable system that works well, and that is prepared should there be a second wave, which I hope we don't.
Yeah, knock on wood that there's not going to be a second wave. But from the language school's perspective, the first wave is still happening. Even though Singapore is loosening up, 100%, 99.99999% of the students in the language school are not Singaporean, and a large majority of them are currently in their own country. So even though they could come here and do a quarantine, they are still studying online. And so of all the language school classes that are happening right now, I'm going to say 30 classes that are happening right now. Only one of those classes is being done face-to-face with the few students who are in Singapore who have remained here. So in terms of a second wave for the language school, we wouldn't even notice the difference, really. Are you having a similar experience in the Pathway program, Ms. Gandhi, about?
Yep. Okay, just to expand on blended learning, what we have is basically we have pre-recorded lectures. So students have an opportunity to actually, that's what we tell them, please listen to it before you come to the classroom. So this we call it like asynchronous. So although we have specific contact hours for every program, now this is, it's an opportunity for students in the sense they can actually listen to the lectures, come better prepared with more questions. So all lectures are basically, as for now, it's all asynchronous and it's online, pre-recorded. So the other thing, well, now as Mike just mentioned, the government is softening a little bit, getting kids to come here. Of course, they do the 14-day stay-home notice. But we have 1 or 2 classes which are running face-to-face, not in terms of lectures, but for the tutorials. So we do have a blended in the sense we have lectures online. We also have blended 1 or 2 tutorials going online and 1 or 2 because bulk of our students, as Mike said, are foreigners, especially for the foundation program. About 80-90% are foreigners. So they stay in their home. They're quite comfortable. Of course, there is a time difference. But, well, as Nimrod said, learning has to be enjoyable. So fortunately, 99% turn up for classes, which is a really good thing. And we think they're really keen because they're kids from Africa, Namibia, for example. When we start at 9 Singapore time, it's 3 a.m. their time. And for them to attend classes is marvelous. Or Kazakhstan, or India even, 2.5 hours difference. We are ahead. So that also is very motivating for us as lecturers because we do notice, even though we have moved on to a blended system, which is going to be around for quite a while because we think it's also very beneficial for students to have these pre-recorded lectures. And anyway, while teaching again, we record all the sessions. So actually they have numerous opportunities to listen, to relearn, unlearn, whatever. So I think the blended is here to stay for good actually for a while because kids are telling us they're enjoying this kind of a, online scheme. And of course, they like it because they say, teacher, sometimes we actually lying in bed, And I know. So, well, okay, you have everything there. Enjoy your stuff. Having breakfast and listening to you, well, that's good. So as I think, if you learn it in an enjoyable way, and I think learning is much faster. Maybe you want to take the next question, Nimrod?
But first, I want to pick that questions in learning. We really like students asking questions. That's how we start building and learning, and that's how we create knowledge. Plus, I think there's another thing that you mentioned, and I forgot. Sorry, but the asking of questions is very fundamental to learn. Please, so we would really, even if it's online, virtual, the world has changed with the pandemic. It's not a reason for us to stop learning because every day is a learning opportunity for us. And when you start asking questions, that drives you to get more curious about the things you want to know.
And that's actually a really good example of blended learning as well, because many subjects, for example, have discussion forums where you can ask questions online, or the lecturer will ask students to do some preparation for class, and then whatever happened in the online space will be taken up in the face-to-face classroom. Could be online discussion forums, could be you're creating an e-portfolio, or you might be working together with other students on a project online, working on a document together, preparing a presentation, recording a video. It could be a whole range of different activities, and then whatever you've done in the online environment feeds back into the face-to-face environment, and can then be taken up and worked upon further.
If I may just add on to what Esther has said, actually we have observed, at least for the foundation and the diploma, the kids are actually more participative, probably because we don't get to see them. So they don't know, they say, okay, I'm more confident now, I can ask questions. Because in a face-to-face environment, some of them may be shy, because they come from very diverse backgrounds. But face-to-face, either they chat with you. Sometimes you don't have the time to finish, you know what I mean? The chat, we say, hold on, come on. I need to type it out. So that's the other thing. And another interesting thing which we found out, because sometimes while we are teaching, we said, like I teach a subject, communication across cultures, and we talk about identity. And of course, basically family is the forefront. And then one of the students will say, teacher, my mother is listening to you and she thinks it's interesting. Oh, all right, that's it. So, well, these are the things that part and parcel of blended learning.
So to get more specific about blended learning, I can talk a bit about how the language school is handling online classes, and then maybe we can, because I know Nimrod, you're also teaching a subject now. Yes. So maybe you guys can pitch in too. So the Pathway program is doing pre-recorded lectures and then doing seminars based on those lectures. It's slightly different in the language school in that the language school has always been very student-centered. The teacher talk time ratio is quite low, so the teacher is talking for about 20% of the class time, and the students are doing 80% of the talking, 80% of the generation of language and other kinds of output. So the students will come in. It's a 5-hour block of learning. You start in the morning, and maybe the teacher will present something from the book, and then the students will run through the activities, and there'll be a discussion. All of this is happening on the on Learn JCU, the learning platform, which is Blackboard Ultra. And so in addition to being in the room and talking, there'll be, for example, a shared document where students will go in and type out their ideas or type out their example sentences. And the teacher will be able to, in real time, go in there and make corrections of the grammar, write down examples of a particular point that the teacher is trying to get across. Our teachers are getting better and better every week at using all of the technology at their disposal to create something that's real and meaningful for students. And it's interesting to see how the teachers have adapted tests for the online environment. Take-home exam. Well, we're not doing take-home exams, but one thing that the language program is doing is running these exams on the platform. So they'll play a video in the main room, and so the students will listen, and then they'll have some questions that they have written out on a piece of paper, and so with their pens they'll be writing down the answers. So we know it's more likely that the answers are coming from their minds. That the spelling is what the knowledge that they've gathered over the course of the term, and then they'll take a picture with their phones, convert it to a PDF, and submit it. So it's an interesting combination of high technology and low technology, so that the students are really truly demonstrating what they've learned. Okay, is there anything else that Nimrod, can you talk a bit about how you've adapted your teaching for this blended environment?
For those students who are here today and you're listening to us, like I'm teaching business communication in that online subject. I would need you to do something for the class. For instance, I would ask for volunteers to take note of questions, because while I'm talking, at least someone else is there to take note of questions. And one of you might do that. The other one would be to share a video. I send a link, and then you share the video, and the whole class is watching. So it's not just me doing things. I will involve you to do things for the class. And I think I like that, and the students like that, because They are part of the online environment, which is itself very interactive. It's cool to me. It's online learning is cultures in interaction. A lot of us are interacting about whatever we want to talk about in that subject. So that's one. So I'm speaking from a business communication lecturer. That hat I'm wearing. The other one as a learning advisor. I just want to make it clear that the Learning Center provides two core services. One is literacy. The other is numeracy. So with literacy, there's a lot of academic writing there that's involved, and then you can work with us so we can help you really create a very good essay, a very good lit review, and report for that matter. In the numeracy program, we have a learning advisor dedicated for mathematics and statistics. So if you're struggling and you feel the need to really learn basic statistical analysis, understand the language of quantitative and qualitative research, understand basic research methods, whether you're using qualitative or quantitative lens, then that person, the learning advisor for maths and stats, can really help you.
And we've got some fantastic student volunteers who are real math whizzes as well. I
Correct.
tell you, I've got a degree. I've gone to higher. I'm a language guy, and so when I see what these 18-year-old kids know about math and stats, they know so much more than me. I'm really humbled by it sometimes. So one of the points that kind of came up earlier that I wanted to touch upon is that the Learning Center is for pathway program students and language school students, but actually it's not just for those students. It's for, I've reached out to students who haven't even joined JCU yet. And I've had former students who have gone to, they've done the degree here and they've graduated and they've reached out to me after they've graduated and gone on with their lives for help. I help students from every level of our university, from before even joining to well after graduation. So this is not a service that's limited to students in the pathway or the language school. I just want to make that point clear. We're nearly at the very end of our discussion here. I just wanted to end by saying something that I find incredibly heartening about James Cook University, Singapore. Whenever I'm on campus or whenever I drop into an online session, I really love seeing that the connections that are being forged between students from so many different places, students from various ASEAN countries coming together as a block and coming to me and having these stories about each other that show how strong their connection has become in the short time that they've been here. I think that's really fantastic. I really love that. Is there anything that
Yeah, for foundation too, as I mentioned, we have students from all walks of life and diverse cultures. So teaching, it makes it really interesting, especially for subjects like communication across cultures. Because if you know a culture of another country, you're able to communicate better. Because some, they talk softly, some, the mannerism, the behavior. So all these are learning curves. And what I would encourage is, it is, as Mike just said, we have a whole range of students, from diverse cultures coming in. That itself is an experience coming to James Cook Singapore. And I'm sure many kids fit in very seamlessly into Singapore because it's efficient, modern, and they feel really quite at home here. So do welcome to the foundation and the pathway programs. As I mentioned, we want to give every student an opportunity to graduate. Thank you.
anything else, any final thoughts that you'd like to add before we wrap it up here today?
Just remain curious, because that's the main intention of being in the university. Be curious, ask questions, and that's the way to go.
Absolutely. I think it's just a really lovely, diverse space where we're working together. We're co-creating knowledge together, staff and students, and it's an exciting place to be.
And, once we get to travel again, if you've got friends from all over the world that you've made in school, your vacations are so much better.
Yes.
When you've got people to see when you go to these faraway places. Thank you very much for your time, Esther, Nimrod, Ms. Gandhi. And thank you for tuning in and listening us today.